So I want to continue with developments in the electoral space, and this is with the gazetting of the Local Government Municipal Structures Amendment Bill 2024. Now, this bill intends to address, among other things, challenges that arise from coalition politics. And independent election analyst Michael Atkins joins us now to talk more. Michael, good morning. Thank you very much for your time and welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning. Yes. Obviously, the question of coalition is a big one in some municipalities, and this bill has a good aim to try and resolve some of those issues.
Right.
But I think there are perhaps some unintended consequences.
We'll talk about it in just a moment, but what we do understand, it can all be a little bit confusing, so I want us to make it as simple as possible for everyone to understand. So let's start with this minimum threshold. And here, a party would need 1% of valid votes that are cast to then qualify for a seat on the council. And if they don't, they have to be eliminated from all further calculations on the allocation of seats on the council. So let's start with the simple explanation of how that works to our viewers.
Yes, this idea of thresholds does apply in some democracies, and it just literally is. If you don't get 1% of the votes, now in the city of Johannesburg, for example, there's 270 seats. So a party may get 2 or 3 seats, but still not meet that 1% of the vote threshold, which would then mean any of those parties, so the smallest parties then get removed from the election. All the votes cast in their favor are simply ignored, and the seats are recalculated without those parties, without those votes, but with the seats they got added into the pile for the other parties to gain.
What does it mean for independent candidates?
Well, that is a great question. It wouldn't affect the position of independent candidates. At local government level, they can participate only in terms of wards. So it wouldn't remove independent candidates, but it would seem odd that an individual can get a seat on his own from a single ward, but a party with twice as many votes getting 2 seats would not be allowed to occupy those.
Then, Michael, concerningly, it would seem that it solidifies then the position of the bigger players.
Certainly. And I think that's partly the intention, that it would redistribute seats from all of the smallest parties, but there is a numerical bias that it pushes them not just to all of the other parties, it pushes them only to the largest parties, out of proportion even to their size.
Do you think it's unfair and undemocratic?
Well, if you take the city of Cape Town, for example, and if you were to run that threshold from the 2021 results, it's quite interesting because 8 small parties would be removed from the council in Cape Town. That's 10 seats that would be allocated. 2 of them would be allocated to the ANC, and 8 of the 10 seats would be allocated to the DA in that instance. And that's in a municipality that does not have a coalition situation at all.
So let's go to the intention of all of it. It was aimed at addressing some of the challenges, and we've seen them arising from coalition politics inside municipalities. And one of the things, Michael, that it sets out to do is to make those coalition agreements binding. So there would have to be an actual contract between agreements and deals that the parties make, to the point that it could become legally enforceable should parties eventually break their contractual agreements that they have between them. Isn't this a good thing and forces them to act in good faith, not just on their own whim?
Look, some of the other provisions are certainly very interesting, and they come across as a very constructive attempt to resolve some of the instability. So yes, the issue of contracts and enforceability, and more importantly, the publishing of those contracts, the openness and accountability are quite an important feature. There is also restriction on these motions of no confidence, where one might change a speaker and a mayor almost at whim. And the proposal is that for the first 2 years, only if there is serious misconduct on the part of an elected mayor or speaker could they be removed. So, but thereafter they could just be a vote in terms of preference. Now, obviously, those details need to be worked through. The implications and consequences must be worked through. But those are a constructive way of addressing some of the problems experienced, particularly in some of the metros.
So just flowing from what you're saying now, with with the way that candidates can be removed and certain representatives can be removed, part of the intention, we understand, is to create transparency, promote stability, but also to prevent the buying of votes and influence peddling, because what the writers say is experience has shown that votes are being bought by certain political parties by soliciting bribes and influencing voting in exchange of favors or returns for elections in other positions as a municipal office bearer. How does it go, or how does it serve the purpose of enhancing the stability of municipal leadership and promote the work of service delivery? Because as we've seen in many cities, major metros, look at the city of Joburg, for example, that when you have this constant revolving doors of leaderships and leadership, their policies, their vision and so on, kind of being instituted and then done away with when someone else comes in, it doesn't augur very well for service delivery.
Look, you're correct. And the residents of those cities are rightly unhappy with how things have played out. But, the question of buying of votes, that's already unlawful. It's already a breach. And when you have the buying of votes, it is not only, if you say, the smaller parties that are guilty, somebody is paying for those votes. And if you complain about a representative of a small party being elected to a position, you have to ask the question, well, who voted for them? And the responsibility lies for those who voted for that person as much as on the person. And what this legislation would be doing, you asked about the fairness, is it would punish all small parties in every municipality for the actions of some small parties in some municipalities. And that seems to me to be a disproportionate action, where some of the other constructive proposals in this bill probably serve to maintain stability in any event.
And I think the bigger point as we go into these elections and we see, this plethora of new political parties, an abundance of choices for the electorate to make, that one of the attributes that a democracy turns upon is the vibrancy of that democracy, the diversity of those who are represented as choices for people in the public to make. And as you're saying, one of the concerns is that it does shut out the new entrants into the political space, also the smaller demographics and other, kind of smaller interest groups. So where to from here then, Michael?
Well, you make a very good point. We are a diverse society, and I would be very surprised if for example, the Constitutional Court were to uphold any measure which either disenfranchised voters or shut out diverse voices in our political landscape. But where to from here? There is a period of public comment until July. Parliament would then table the bill, process it. There would be public submissions in that process. If Parliament, the next Parliament, in its wisdom, decided to pass the bill as it is, then of course there would be recourse to the courts to address any potential constitutional shortfalls. So there is still quite a long road to go on this, and hopefully there will be a lot of public discussion around the aims and whether the measures actually suit those aims.
Thank you so much for talking to us this morning. I really appreciate your analysis, Michael. We'll see what happens going forward. Still, the prayer of every South African is going to be that, cities function, that public servants are mandated to do a particular job and actually execute on those roles instead of the pursuit of, ego or a personal political power. So let's see how this does influence creating the kind of stability that it is envisaged to create. And as you say, some of those criticisms and how they might alter the trajectory of this development. This is the Municipal Amendments Bill. Independent election analyst Michael Atkins there. Thank you very much again.